Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Marketer's Blueprint podcast. I am your host, Nathan Gibson, and here with me I have the wonderful, bald, and beautiful Gabe Arnold. Gabe, how you doing this morning?
I'm fantastic, Nathan, and still very bald, so that's good.
We love your baldness, Gabe. It never ceases to amaze me. You look great. So, we're super excited to be here yet again with another fantastic podcast episode. Super ironically about podcasting. We're going to jump right into talking about some essential tips and tricks for starting a podcast and how it can honestly help grow your business. Podcasting is a super great way to engage with your audience, promote your business, and even just have good content. So, let's dive right into it. So, podcasting has been rising in popularity over in recent years, and as we move further into 2024 and even into 2025, the trend is only going to continue. A really interesting stat is podcast listeners worldwide are projected to reach over 504 million this year. So more so than ever, people are listening to podcasts. I know you do, Gabe, on your commutes and workouts. Aren't you pretty avid on podcasting, other than the one, of course, that we record?
Yeah, I've listened to a lot of amazing podcasts over the years, and I go through seasons where I binge on them for a few months and then take a break. But yeah, it's a really amazing platform to like educate yourself, like see what's going on, like of course be entertained. But I find it's kind of like it's like the junior to an audiobook is the way I always look at a podcast. Like if it's a
That's
short
interesting.
conversation, but it's in depth and you get to listen to experts and hear great things like that. And so I've followed different entrepreneurs over the years. I've followed, history podcasts, different things and like that.
Oh,
So yeah,
yeah.
I absolutely love podcasting.
That's what's so great about podcasting, right? Is it's so versatile. You can view podcasts for entertainment, news, education. Not everybody is a podcast listener. A lot of people will watch it on YouTube. We're on YouTube as well, so we make it as broadly available as we can. But it's really convenient for podcasts. I love your analogy of kind of audiobook junior. It's super convenient. You can listen to it on a commute, on a workout. Some people, while they're doing like monotonous work tasks, will have a podcast on the side. So it's really, really great. If your audience is already an avid podcast listening base, starting your own podcast can be a real game changer for your business. For example, how many years have you been podcasting on and off, Gabe?
I don't know, 5 or 6 years, a long time.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at when today's business leaders come out because that's still an active show that I bring guests on periodically.
Yeah.
But I think it started in like 17 or 18. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure even before then you've been consuming podcasts and, learning the ins and outs of them. Not only is it super beneficial for businesses, but it's also so fun. You and I have such a blast on these podcasts, and we make it engaging and fun for the listeners while also being informative and business ready. So I'm super excited for today's episodes. I've always been passionate about podcasting. I'm super, super happy to be in the role that I am, being able to host these podcasts with you. So today we're going to dive into some fundamentals of podcasting, some tips and tricks that anybody can implement into their own podcasting. But first, my favorite portion is playing a little game today, Gabe. So we're gonna play Two Truths and a Lie, a game that everybody's heard of, and I'm gonna run three different podcasting statistics, and you're gonna try and guess which one of them is the lie. I've cleverly manipulated some things to make it, a little bit difficult, but you're very keen, so I'm interested to see. So let's run three things by you and see if you can find what's not true.
All right.
So the first one is 66% of consumers today prefer podcasts over TV. Over 100 million podcasts exist globally, and Joe Rogan is widely accepted as the most popular podcaster. What do you think might be the lie there?
The first one's the lie.
It is not. Haha, I got you. So it's the second one. It's not 100 million, it's 414 million podcasts exist globally. And it is true. That is a crazy accurate statistic of 66% of consumers today prefer podcasts over TV. How do you feel about that? Because I thought that would be the one that you guess.
No way, man. That's crazy. That's good to hear. I think podcasting
Yeah.
is more educational than TV, and it also speaks to like how everybody can have their own channel. Like everybody
Right.
can have education, entertainment channel. My son listens to podcasts like crazy.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and he's 12 years old. So
There you go. It's for all ages and demographics. I mean, you can find that's the crazy statistic is there is over 414 million podcasts. So they're really is a niche for everybody. Anybody can fit in where they want to fit in. It's so versatile and broad. And that first statistic really intrigues me because it goes to show kind of the decline of TV and the rise of other medias, right?
Yeah.
So we see that in like Twitch streams and YouTube and shorts, and all of those things are on the rise, including podcasting, which in turn kind of declines TV, which is really unique because when even I was younger, and of course as you were growing up, TV was the thing. Everybody watched TV, right? And I know you still watch a lot of TV. I know you like binge watching your shows, you know.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely, you're right. It's what's fascinating, and like I've been following this probably for 10, 15 years, if not longer, is that the more technology evolves, the more we can personalize content the way we want to, consume it. And so that's why my son listens to an anime podcast and he emails in and
Yes.
answers questions live on the show, which he loves. I listen to business and history and, things like that a ton. You can listen to political stuff, news. You can listen to, the big popular ones like Joe Rogan or something like that. And we all have incredible access to customize exactly what we want to experience, which makes like all these sub channels essentially, we're no longer dependent on, local network TV, which was years ago.
Right.
But even the streaming stuff, there's so much availability to everybody to choose their, custom entertainment, everything that they want. And that's why finding a handful of people, a few thousand people that follow and like what you do on your podcast is more than enough to build a
Oh
business, to
yeah.
build a brand, and to and to really grow. It's amazing what kind of access we have as content creators and consumers too.
Exactly. And I love your point on that content creation. We've talked about it before on the podcast. It's absolutely huge. And podcasting is a really fun and engaging way to do that. It's so versatile, as we said. People can consume it on so many different mediums, really any time of day, and it can fit huge variety of people. So I'm so excited to get into some fundamentals of podcasting. So we're going to play one more quick little game. It's not too crazy. So um, I have here that me and the team have put together 7 different tips for creating and maintaining a podcast. So what I'd like you to do first is just shoot your ideas first before we go through what we've established. What are some tips and tricks that you've, accumulated over the years for starting and running a podcast?
Yeah, the first thing I always tell people is one is it's easier to do a show like this, like where you either have somebody you always host, like you host and I come on, or you always have a guest on. It's easier to do a show with interacting with somebody else than doing a solo show, and it's way more
Sure,
entertaining.
yeah.
I've done I've started a few solo shows and they've never really gone anywhere, because
Hmm.
it's harder to talk to yourself and make it entertaining or useful, compared to like having dialogue that people like to listen into. So that's
Yeah.
one thing to keep in mind. Having a solo show can be done, but it's challenging. I tell people to avoid that. The second thing I say is make sure that you are planning, like if you're going to launch your podcast, schedule out, what you're going to talk about for the first like 10 or 12 episodes at least, so you can get momentum. You can
Mm.
record 3 or 4 podcasts and then you can actually publish or be ready to publish and drip them out. But consistency is really key, because over time, the more consistent you are, that's when you get more listeners. You also get people
Yeah.
consistently listening to you and following you, and you're building trust. You're building that relationship with somebody that you haven't met or talked to yet. But then when they need something, especially if you're doing something, from a business perspective in your podcast, when they need something, they're going to reach out to you. And just as frequently, they're going to refer somebody and say, oh, check out the show, check out this podcast. I really like it, just by being consistent. So make sure that you really have a plan to execute, with consistency, which is why it's easy to record this show, because you're always here and ready to show up, and we get to
Yes,
hang out
sir. My
and do
favorite part
that.
of the week.
So engineer that accountability and consistency in it. Definitely plan out, your first 10 or 12 episodes so you've got some momentum there. And then ultimately, it producing the content is step one, but just as important, and maybe even more important, honestly, is like really have a good distribution plan. Like we email this out, we post it
Oh
on
yeah.
social, we promote it. Promoting content is probably more important. Well, once you have good content, it's equally as important, or you're really going to get
Yeah.
leverage once you're promoting content. And so those are some of the first things that come up for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love what you said of like making I can't say enough, make it versatile. Like we made it a very big point when we re-engaged this podcast to make it available on every platform that we could. because
Yeah.
that way it's more likely to be in the eyes of the people that consume content on that form.
Yeah.
There's people that are on YouTube a lot. I'm a big YouTube guy. I like visual, like watching the videos. When I watch podcasts, I usually watch them.
Yeah.
But there's some people who go on a run or while they're running errands or on a long drive. Some people commute. That those people are on Spotify, Apple, all those other places that's just purely audio. So it's really important to make it versatile. So
Yeah.
I love those tips. We're gonna kind of go top to bottom here. I'm gonna shoot one by you, and you're gonna give me your thoughts on them because I'm sure you have plenty to say on each of these. And it's kind of gonna go from the start of like an idea of a podcast, what steps you need to take down to the bottom of the funnel. We love funnels at BME; they work super well. So we'll kind of go top to bottom. The first one I'd like to chat about is setting the stage, picking a catchy name and a theme, and assembling your team. So it starts with setting the stage, right?
Yep. Absolutely. And yeah, it's key. You want to have an idea of who you're talking to, what value you want to put out there, what you're going to be talking about. Because, like, as much as it would be fun for you and I, Nathan, if we talked about marketing and technology and how to grow your business one week, and then next week we talked about your anime shows, and then we talked about, whatever military, shows I'm watching right now or whatever.
Right.
As fun as that would be for us, it wouldn't be any continuity for people. And so it's really important to choose, like, who am I trying to serve? What am I going to talk about? And have a structure and theme for it, because as much as like entrepreneurs, which plenty of entrepreneurs start podcasts, as much as we like to have variety and do a bunch of new things and just change,
Yep.
do new ideas all the time, that's not necessarily how our audience is that we're going to serve. They're looking for consistency. They want to know the show's going to come out at the same time every week. They're going to want to know there's, more marketing things they can talk about. It's like we talked about AI a couple weeks ago,
Oh yeah.
how that can help your marketing. Podcasting is something, as I think about it, I think I've done 500 episodes or something like that.
My
I had a show
gosh.
every day for a year, like, but
That's
I say,
crazy.
like, whatever you're going to go after, if you're consistent and talking about things that help people, they'll keep tuning in. And it's that consistency over time that matters. And you need to choose a lane that you can be excited about for a long time, and that you can keep giving value. And over time, people will just trust you more and more. So it's definitely being strategic in how you plan out that aspect, and then making sure the name makes sense. And I'll give you an example, because I've had great business names, and I've had, or podcast names, and I've had stupid ones. Um, Today's business leaders is, I thought about it, came up with that, and it's excellent because I bring in entrepreneurs, I bring business leaders, I have a wide range of people that I can bring in.
Yeah. It makes
And
sense.
that show has made our company $500,000, which is crazy because it's a teeny little show,
Yeah.
which we can get into later, maybe another episode. The next show I did daily for a year was called the Engine Builder Show, and well, eventually people followed and listened, and they enjoyed it, and they started following it, every day when it came out. I didn't really realize, like, oh, I'm not actually explaining like it's about marketing or technology. It could be
Right. It can be
it could
confusing.
of like an actual, physical engine, whereas this podcast name is better. And that's how you learn. Like, sometimes you start a podcast and run it for a while and you need to do something new or
Yeah.
change the name. But the marketer's blueprint is pretty clear. We're talking about marketing. Like, everybody will know.
Yeah.
End of the day, we're going to get to marketing about that, in different strategies. So those are some of the
Yep.
things I keep in mind.
Yeah, and I love that. Picking an accurate name and staying consistent are the key things to take away from that. Staying
Yeah.
consistent and then tailoring your content to your target audience. We'll talk about that a ton on the life of this podcast. So the next one is one that's super important to me, and that's being an engaging host. Reaching out to guests who will excite your audience, and then finding your own unique voice and interview style, and embracing what makes you stand out. Couple of things from me on that is, as we've developed this podcast, I've leaned more into putting more of my personality into each episode and just being me. I have my gaming stuff in the background because that's me. I'm sitting here on my gaming computer. Sometimes it comes up in conversation while we're talking about marketing because it's always important to talk about what's, relevant to people.
Yeah.
So, being an engaging host is super important, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes from just being comfortable and just being yourself, be authentic. Nobody wants to hear, and unfortunately, I've been interviewed on a couple of these shows over the years, and I avoid them once I figure it out. But I've been on the shows where it's like, here's the very dry question, Gabe, and there's no energy, and then I'm supposed to like make it exciting. If you're not really leading and engaging well as a host, then people aren't going to want to listen. And also, as the host, and you're amazing at this, Nathan, you bring in the right questions, you're energetic, you always get me excited about things I love talking about, so you spark
Yeah.
that energy. But you don't talk for, 25 minutes of the show as the host and then let me fill in the gaps. Like as a host, you really need to ask the right questions, ask open-ended things, and let the other people, the guest, or in this case, in some sense, we co-host this. Like we each have time to share our thoughts. So
Yep.
being intentional about creating that space for people to really share their experience. On my other show, Today's Business Leaders, I open up with a question that is like, when did you first realize you're an entrepreneur? And designing like that show, that I have one scripted question for that show, and like that question goes on for 45 minutes to 2 hours.
Huge.
Like I really dig into people's stories, and that's how we learn. So like understanding how to show up and really create that space and make it, fun and engaging and comfortable for your guests, for the other people on the show. If you do kind of a group show or a co-led one like this is really key.
Yeah, and I agree. Giving the person space to speak. That's something over my time working with you, you've helped me master because I'm a talker. I love sharing my ideas and my points with people, but it's important to take a step back and let other people share as well, especially when you're in the host position. So taking those audio cues and having a good back and forth and good synergy with somebody, especially in our case where we're co-hosts and we
Yeah.
both have exciting things to say and content, give each other turns, take good back and forth, and that's how you create really engaging content, stuff people are excited for. So I love that.
Yeah.
um Another super big one, you're going to have a lot to say on this one, is technology talk. Invest in quality hardware and software to ensure professional audio production. I have a standalone mic that I love. It works really well. I have a high quality 1080p camera, and I'm sure you have a slew and a lot of different technology pieces. So how important is technology to you when it comes to podcasting?
Yeah, so I mean, you can go so far, and I have friends that are, have done way more podcasting than I over the years that invest a ton. But the simple things to keep in mind when you're getting started is get a high quality mic. I'm a huge fan of Yeti mics. I have a Blue Yeti,
Mm,
but and then I forget, I have another one too somewhere that I like, but it's not on my desk right now. But spend $100 on a mic.
yep.
Um, in the past, I would have said, just start with something simple you're familiar with, like Zoom. But today, there's so much more than there was even a handful of years ago. We
Yeah.
we use something called Riverside FM. It records in
Love
HD.
it.
It helps you make little short clips out of it, and I believe, I don't know if this is still the public pricing because I've had this tool forever, but like it's $9 a month for us. So like regardless of what it is, it's
Yeah,
very affordable. You save all your recordings there, and then yeah, like most cameras or most computers are going to have a decent camera, but
for
if
sure.
you're doing video as well, which I definitely recommend, don't short yourself, like you said earlier, Nathan. Don't just produce an audio podcast when you can put something out, simple on YouTube as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just it's not that expensive, but do invest in a good mic. My my son told me once when I was recording something and I was testing something, he's like, "Your audio really sucks," and I was like, "Oh, thanks." And like
He's so honest.
he was very honest. I think he didn't say it sucked, but he was very honest and said like it really wasn't any good. And like have other people listen to your show and say like, "What do you think? Like, how's the quality of it? Is it engaging? It is entertaining?" But yeah,
Yeah.
from a setup standpoint, fortunately, it's really not that expensive anymore because
Yeah.
spend once on a camera mic, and then Riverside's a great tool. There's other tools, but don't overcomplicate it. Focus on just getting a setup that's super easy to click and start every time you're going to record, and then make it easier for yourself to publish too.
Yeah, and like you said, these tools are readily available and pretty affordable these days. I've been in the gaming computer space for years now, and the mic that I bought was less than $100. It was like I think 60 to 80, and I've had it for probably 5 years, and it is still going strong.
Yeah,
So
it's
think of
super
it like
quick.
this too, like you put an investment into these things, and it doesn't have to break the bank. Technology, if you take care of it, will typically last you for years and years. And then when
Yep.
it's time to replace it, you can find another affordable option. So you don't have to break the bank, but do make sure you get some high quality equipment because it will help you in the long run.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think that's super important. Another one that kind of ties into what we said before is effective time management. So set clear goals, create a schedule, and prioritize tasks to stay on track.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Like if I mean we essentially record almost the same time every week. Sometimes I move it a little bit based on my schedule, but I move it a half hour at most. But regardless, like it's in my calendar. I'm accountable to do it. We
Yep.
get, we plan out what we're going to talk about. The team supports us with that. But yeah, just be consistent in recording and be consistent in releasing because as with all things, the algorithms that people talk about are driven by human behavior. They're not just
Yep.
these random technology things out there. Algorithms are reflective of human behavior. So when you put your podcast out the same day every week, then people start to expect that and then they go to download it. And if you don't put it out the same day, or you miss a week, then they're going to stop paying attention to you because you're not providing value consistently. And so, yeah, it's definitely key to have that accountability. That's why it's always good to do a show with a guest or a co-host or something like that. But yeah, plan, be consistent, and do like, especially for people starting, like I mentioned, record at least 4 or 6 episodes. Like, get yourself a running start so that
Yep.
if you do have a
Great
week come
idea.
up, or I mean, I was sick a few weeks ago and I was like, I'm just not going to record. And I forget what we did,
And
but
we were okay.
then we have a gap to fill in. So like plan for real life, but make sure you're consistent in dropping at least once a week.
Yep.
Is my opinion. I don't think shows that do less than weekly really have the ability to get as much traction.
I agree.
And don't think day one that you're going to do a daily show. That is a massive amount of work. I've
Huge.
done it, so I would recommend do a weekly show. Do that for a year, and then evaluate like, oh, can we do more or something like that.
Yeah, and weekly is a great time increment, especially with the length of podcasting like we do. We shoot for 30 minutes and sometimes it runs a little over. Give yourself a little leniency, but try and stick to that schedule because it will
Yeah,
help you be able to talk about everything you have planned because a lot of people have planned things to talk about as we do. But
yeah,
this will lead into my next point. Everything doesn't have to be planned. I surprise you with a lot of things every week and it makes it
yeah,
super fun and engaging. So I would recommend, especially like with what we talked about earlier, being a podcast host, having a set, list or script of things to like guidelines to go off of, but go off kilter a little bit, go on little tangents. People love that kind of thing because it's human. That's how people
yeah,
have conversations. And so my next point was practice and become comfortable recording yourself,
yeah,
engage with your guests and have meaningful conversations. You can't do that if, like you said, every single question is dry and cookie cutter, right? It
yeah.
adds some personality, adds some flair while still sticking to, the schedule, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you're gonna bring this up later or not, Nathan, 'cause you know how I show up to these shows, but I let you run the show. But in my course that I put out a couple years ago, which is still really useful, it's called Podcaster 123.
Yep.
One of the first things we talk about in there is just record your test episode. Like, don't go in and think your first episode is gonna be perfect. Just find somebody to, have it on as a guest, like record a trial run. And that will help you be more comfortable in being on video and recording yourself.
Oh yeah.
I, in the moment, sometimes I forget, like I can come on and record video trainings or do a podcast or do this. Like I've done, like I said, 500 some podcasts. I've probably done 2,500 videos
Oh,
in the last
easily.
10 years.
Easily.
And if you go back, which this will be a funny point because Nathan did this actually,
It really did, yeah.
if you go back and find my oldest YouTube videos, you'll find that I sucked. I wasn't that good at it compared to where I was at now. But as long as you're willing to suck until you don't suck anymore, which is the simplest way to be successful,
That's huge. That's
you
big.
can just come on and be yourself and keep getting more comfortable and realize that it doesn't matter if the record button is on. You're just talking to another person, ideally. That's why I always recommend not doing a solo show. And
100%.
then, don't overthink it. I stumble. I use filler words. I'm not always as smooth as I want to be. That will get better as you just practice. So don't be
Yeah.
hard on yourself. But doing a test run is always good before your official first episode. And then you just be yourself and roll with it, and it'll all work out. Because again, like you said, Nathan, everybody's tuning in to have a real human experience and hear
Yep.
what your life and your perspective is like, or what you can teach and share. It's not about showing up and being a TED Talk level performance. That's not
Right.
podcasting. So.
Yeah, that's not what you shoot for with a podcast. It's intended to be a little bit more relaxed most of the time because you're having a conversation, some back and forth. And so I really encourage you to, of course, stick to what you need to speak about, especially when you're having a specific, like we talk about marketing and trends and all the things like that, but also add your personality into it. And I like what you said. I was going to mention it. Our Podcaster 123 course dives super, super deep into all the topics we've talked about today. It will equip you with the exact knowledge and strategies that you'll need to launch honestly, a wildly successful podcast. It is a super, super in-depth course that goes even further than we go today. And also, something super exciting is from now until November 1st, If you subscribe to the Marketer's Blueprint newsletter, which you can in the description below, you can get 50% off of the the Podcaster 123 course. All you have to do is use the promo code podcast50. That's PODCAST 50 at checkout, and you'll be able to get a huge discount on some extremely valuable content. There will be more information on, if you're listening on YouTube, it'll be in the comments. You can, of course, check out our website at businessmarketingengine.com, and we can have all that information ready for you. But it is super valuable, guys, so don't miss out on that. After that, we will go ahead and dive into the last 2 tips we have for podcasting, and then we'll talk about one of our wins for the week. And this one is super important. It's something I've worked really hard on, and I really enjoy, and that's mastering the interview. When you have, we've talked about it a few times, it's really beneficial to have more than one person on a podcast, so mastering the interview is super important. You want to craft thought-provoking questions that spark interesting conversations. So make sure that what you're doing is engaging and setting the other person up for success, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what that's what is fascinating to me about how I like fell into podcasting, is because inside the course, the Podcaster 123 course, I show, and when I released that course, I think the revenue from the show was like 350,000. Now it's closer to 500,000.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting course. I would encourage everybody to check it out, and it's crazy affordable. But what's interesting is that when you ask the right questions and you get people engaged, you can actually simulate shared experience when you get people talking. And when I ask you about, like, if I was interviewing you on the other show, or like you're interviewing me now and I'm sharing stories, I start to feel like you were there with me.
Right.
It's a really fascinating part of what happens when we ask interesting questions, we get people engaged, we really have that true kind of human connection and dialogue. I walk away from the show feeling like, oh man, I trust Nathan more, and he knows me better. And so if something comes up and Nathan has resources of support, or even if I don't need what Nathan has, I can refer somebody to him.
Exactly.
That's what's really powerful, is that simulated, like, shared experience that we create, because we are having a real experience here. But the really interesting psychology to me is, like I said, if I even just talking about, like, it's crazy, I've made almost 500,000 from the other show. Now I feel like you were a part of all that, Nathan, just because I'm describing it to you and I'm talking to you about it. And so my trust level goes up for you. So there's a really amazing dynamic that happens in this type of show.
Yeah, and I would love to get into that on another episode too, because we're at BME, we are super big into psychology. Actually, it goes into a lot of the things that we do. My girlfriend is a psychologist, so it's a big part of my life. So we'll have to put a pin in that, Gabe. We got to talk about that more.
Absolutely.
But the last one we'll talk about, and then I do want to talk about one win because it's super important, is building your brand. So promote your podcast. Utilize various marketing channels to reach your target audience. You can also develop a sustainable growth plan for your podcast. We've talked about that a little bit. And then regularly review and edit your episodes to maintain the high standards that you have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we use a editing platform that's like text-based that I'll remember the name of, or the team will put in the show notes.
Yeah, yep.
Which is really cool because you just load everything in there, and you can edit a Word document basically, and it can edit your show, which is an awesome tool for that. So and it's again super affordable tool. There's plenty of simple editing tools out there. It's definitely a good idea to edit your episodes, especially with how accessible it is to do now with simple tools like that, because what you won't hear when this episode comes out is where I stumbled or forgot something, or if I coughed, or or if there was a glitch in the internet or something. Like, nobody needed to hear that part of the show. It's not that interesting. So
Exactly.
and make it concise, and cut out the pieces that aren't meaningful. That's going to improve the quality of the show. And also, then you start there and make sure it's really edited well. When you get to promotion, there's a lot of ways you can promote things. From putting it out in your email newsletter is always a good idea. Definitely posting about it on social media, and don't post it once. Post it a few times, and remember, like, talking about doing a podcast will be exciting and valuable and helpful to our audience when they hear this. They hear it the first time, but we can post that again in a couple months, because more people that that I've connected with, or more people on our email list, they can hear about it again. Don't ever think an episode is one and done. Keep promoting things, and that's really helpful.
Yeah, and we promoted the podcast weeks before we relaunched, weeks and
Yeah.
weeks on multiple channels, on your personal Facebook, on our business Facebook, on our LinkedIn. We were everywhere because we wanted to get people excited and to just build the brand awareness. So I think that's absolutely huge. Never forget to build your brand when you're podcasting for business reasons, right? So those are 7 essential tips that are huge for building your podcast. Again, you can check out our Podcaster 123 course. There will be more information about that. But I do want to wrap up with talking about a huge win that we've talked about a lot. And that's one of our team members provided valuable in-person support to a small business client. I wonder which team member that was. Oh, wait. It was me. I got to travel to one of our small businesses. That it was a tremendous experience. We were lucky enough to where we live in the same state. We work remotely, so she and I linked up, and I was able to help her promote her business. I helped her run farmers markets, a local event. I helped her with production, bottling, and labeling her products. And it was an absolutely crucial experience for me in my role because I'm the business connection specialist in my day-to-day job. So I speak to tons of business owners every day. So seeing it hands-on in person was extremely valuable. So first, before I get your thoughts, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really key, especially from like the entrepreneurial perspective and as owners, that a lot of times entrepreneurs have different experience or have had different jobs or they have all these ideas and they start a company and then they have a big vision and that's awesome. But as you grow a team, it's so important to invest in every team member with the right training, the right experiences, the right exposure to different aspects. And I know, just like you said, Nathan, you talk to hundreds of business owners a week, and to be physically in the small business with Michelle, our great friend Michelle Finn, who sells.
I love Michelle. She's going to be watching it. Love you, Michelle.
Yeah, and I just love what she does. And so I was like, you know what? If Nathan can go experience what it's like to be an entrepreneur like her every day, to be creating her products, to be,
Yeah.
selling at events and being in her community and just doing what she does every day, then that's going to give you such broader perspective for when you're having conversations over the phone with people, when you're meeting with people on, on your video calls. And so I love that happened because it allows you to just have a lot broader perspective. And it's something that every role we have, we're always looking at ultimately like how can I enrich and train that team member, because if
Yeah.
I empower each team member on the team to grow and become more skilled and to be able to connect with people and be more effective in their role, that's how the company grows. When you have a team, when you're just starting out as an entrepreneur, you're doing all those things yourself, which is awesome. And then as you
Right.
grow and start to add people in, the more you invest in your team, then the more the business is going to grow. And so I'm so glad that you got to have experience, and I'm so grateful that my dear friend Michelle was willing to have you in her business for a couple of days, because it's incredibly valuable to you and to the whole company.
We had so much fun and it was so engaging. I really did want to speak on that today because it was a tremendous experience. But, ladies and gentlemen, that looks like it's about our time for today's episode. We covered 7 very, very useful tips for starting a podcast, so I encourage you to rewatch it and take some notes on that. And then, of course, one more time, you guys can check out our Podcaster 123 course, and with a special promo code Podcast50, you can get 50% off of it. Guys, it's already at a super, super good price, and with 50% off, it is a no-brainer. So definitely check that out. We would love to be able to help you out. And thank you, Gabe, for being here again today, and we look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Yep. Thanks, Nathan. It's good to see you, and great to have everybody tune in today.
Bye, everybody.